So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Brownfield Development Area, or BDA, application virtual workshop. My name is Sean Vroom. I'm the director of the New Jersey TAB program here at NJIT. NJIT is hosting today's meeting, and I will also be assisting in the meeting's facilitation. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. All participants are going to be muted during the presentations. All questions that you may have should be submitted via the Q&A feature on the WebEx window that you have in front of you, not the chat. And copies of the presentations and the workshop recording will be made available on the NJIT TAB website under the Resources tab under the heading of Workshop and Seminar Downloads. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Frank McLaughlin of NJDEP for some opening remarks. So, Frank, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sean, and thanks to NJIT for and our partners at the Environmental Protection Agency in helping us host this event. Thank you for the attendees and our speakers that you're going to hear today. My name is Frank McLaughlin. I manage the Office of Brownfield and Community Revitalization for the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. We have a great opportunity reopening a very successful program called the Brownfield Development Area Program, and you're going to hear some conversations about how we've taken some of the most largest and challenging sites in a number of municipalities, and through this unique voluntary partnership between the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, local municipalities or redevelopment authorities and local stakeholders, how we can marshal attention, resources, working with various state agencies and federal agencies to bring the resources together to tackle some of our most challenging sites and some of our largest economic development sites and largest open space sites in the state. So we're excited to have you here. We're excited to be expanding our program, and we have a great list of speakers, and we will be able to answer some questions after in the later part of the presentation, and you're going to be able to also email me and my staff with any questions you have following the presentation. So thank you so much for attending. Let me send it back to Sean for his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Frank. So to give us a good foundation for today's workshop, and not knowing how familiar all of you are with the term brownfield, I thought that we'd start with the state of New Jersey's definition of a brownfield. So the state of New Jersey defines a brownfield as any former or current commercial or industrial site that is currently vacant or underutilized, and on which there has been or there is suspected to have been a discharge of a contaminant. So, while this definition is recognized in state legislation, there are many variations on the definition. Up here at NJIT, we consider brownfield simply as a commercial real estate deal with an environmental twist. So you may not have been, aware of that definition, but I'm sure you're aware of the brownfields that are contained within your communities. Brownfield sites include old mills, factories, chemical plants, junkyards. Basically, they're the byproducts of our industrial legacy. So the closed gas stations and the auto repair shops, former dry cleaners, and some other vacant commercial properties, they're also considered brownfields. And again, due to their past uses or the types of building materials that were used at the time of their construction, that is why they are considered such. So it's important to point out that not all contaminated sites are brownfields, and not all brownfields are contaminated. So an example would be that if you have an active gas station that experiences a leaking underground storage tank, it's a contaminated property, but it's not a brownfield, and that's because it's still functioning as a viable business. A property, on the other hand, a property that's containing a closed auto repair facility would be considered a brownfield because it's a former commercial site that is currently vacant. And because of its past use, there may be contamination. However, that it doesn't necessarily mean that it is contaminated. So, as I'm sure you're all aware, brownfields cause negative impacts to communities. They contribute to neighborhood deterioration and the negative perception of the neighborhood. They can attract vandals, open dumping, or other illegal or unwanted activities. They can degrade soil, water, and air quality and potentially cause public health issues. They can also lower property values, reduce employment opportunities, and lead to a loss of tax revenue and limit economic growth. But brownfield sites do have some advantages associated with them. Many are located along waterways and rail lines and in downtowns, giving them a locational advantage for redevelopment. And many already have existing infrastructure such as utility and sewer lines, which would make these properties more attractive than land that had not been previously developed. And most of all, a brownfield holds the potential for being transformed into a community asset. So while these industrial legacy and commercial sites plague our communities, the cleanup and redevelopment of brownfields present us with opportunities that include the triple bottom line, which is the environment, economic, and social equity. So when we clean up brownfield sites, we're improving the environment because we're removing the pollution. Brownfields can also be redeveloped to deal with climate change issues such as persistent flooding by creating land uses that store floodwaters, such as rain gardens, multi-use fields, and other forms of green stormwater infrastructure. They can also improve air quality by addressing heat island impacts and turned into microforests to capture carbon. Redeveloping brownfield sites can improve a community's economic conditions by catalyzing economic development, creating jobs. They increase tax revenues and diversifying the local economic base.
Yeah.
And as well as redeveloping brownfield sites, it helps to improve, in lieu of the other two, it also, redeveloping brownfield sites helps to improve social equity in so many different ways, including by removing health and safety hazards, removing eyesores, and improving community appearances. It alleviates community fears and worries, and transforming these properties into community needed uses such as affordable housing, recreation, schools, or healthcare facilities, and much more. All positive impacts to a community. So the basic steps in the redevelopment process for brownfields includes planning, site assessment, site remediation, and ultimately site redevelopment. And you can see that even along that whole process, there are other steps that you would be engaging in. You would engage your community, you would identify funding sources, you would help build partnerships along the way. Partnerships are vital to the success of these projects. And you can also see some of the other, during the planning stage, you might assemble your task force. You could create brownfields inventory and prioritize the brownfield sites that you have. When you go through the site assessment phase, you'll see that that's where you do your phase 1, your phase 2s, and your remedial investigation. You also, during this process, as you start to get that information, can start to develop your site reuse vision. So the first phase of work should be the planning phase. It's widely recognized that successful brownfield redevelopment projects are based on a foundation of sound planning practices. There's a strong correlation between effective early on and continued planning with redevelopment success. And I think you'll be able to see after DEP's presentation how BDAs fit into this early phase. So why is it important to plan? It's about getting your ducks in a row and positioning yourself to set and meet the goals of your brownfield redevelopment process. So, what you want to do is you want to take the time to plan, and what that will help you do is garner community participation and support for the redevelopment. It'll help you write a stronger grant application when you start to seek funding sources, because it helps funders see that this is a real project, not just an idea that, and that its nexus was from a comprehensive planning process. It's going to strengthen the marketability of your site. Developers will have a good picture of the overall project so they know what they're getting into. It will show the community's commitment to potential developers and also help you attract the type of developers that you want. Those interested in building projects, you want those developers that are interested in building projects that the community desires, not just what they want. And it also provides continuity for the ultimate redevelopment of the site. You got to remember that, elected officials come and go, so does staff, but a solid vision and a solid plan can endure all of those changes. So there's a number of activities that should be initiated in the planning phase that will play an important role throughout the redevelopment process, and I'll discuss the more common ones. There are, however, two that are extremely critical for success, and they include partnerships and stakeholders, as well as assessing where you're at. The reason they're so critical is that they comprise the bedrock of a brownfields project, as all other elements are supported by them and relate in some way. So now the list that I have on this slide isn't in any sequential order for the time or importance, as many of the elements that I have listed here occur concurrently. So the first element of a brownfields redevelopment plan is the identification of a project champion. A project champion is an individual with the time, the energy, and the persistence to keep a project moving forward. They should be organized and have the passion to advocate and promote the project. The next element is community engagement, which is extremely important and many times overlooked or done poorly. I won't go into a lot of detail about this, as I'm going to discuss it in detail in the next section. So having a project vision is extremely important. You can't plan a trip if you don't know where you want to go. Developing a project vision as early on as possible is extremely beneficial, as it can help direct many of the other project elements, such as identifying a developer, identifying and securing funding, and the level of remediation related to the ultimate end use. I should also mention that having a clear and informed vision is the direct result of having included the appropriate stakeholders and partners in the process, as well as the implementation of a solid community engagement plan. Next is having a brownfields inventory. This element typically pertains to brownfield projects that focus on a target area. So that would be a downtown, a waterfront, or a community gateway. Having a list of brownfield sites at the ready supports and promotes a comprehensive redevelopment approach that meets the community's needs. Prioritization of those identified brownfields. So once you identify your brownfield sites, you should prioritize them to identify those with the highest redevelopment potential, whether that be for an economic redevelopment, open space, recreational space, or whatever use is in line with your community's vision or goals. Examples of prioritization criteria include site size, access, zoning, environmental conditions. That would be contamination, flooding, and wetlands if they're present on the site, a master plan or redevelopment plan, as well as existing infrastructure. So it gets you the low-hanging fruit, and that's important because it gets the ball rolling on a brownfields program. And with these projects, we've seen it many times, success breeds success. And then lastly, you want to identify your funding. You want to start thinking about what sources and how it's going to be applied to your project, what the anticipated costs may be, what the project tasks and elements are going to be, and what funding you have secured and what is anticipated, so that you can, in your developing this larger plan, know what sources are going to be brought to bear and when. And then again, actually, that's the end of that slide. So I want to talk a little bit more now about partnerships. So brownfields redevelopment, it's a team sport, and one of the first activities that should be initiated in the planning phase that will play an important role throughout the redevelopment process is the identification of stakeholders and development of supportive partnerships. The redevelopment of a brownfields generally requires more stakeholder participation than the typical real estate transaction, and that's due to a number of possible factors, including the complex history of the site, community concerns about the public health impacts and safety, difficulty in getting funding and financing, and competing visions for the site's redevelopment. In addition, the cost of redeveloping a contaminated property often goes well beyond the available local resources, and therefore partnerships are critical for success. So why are they important? So partners, they bring resources, they bring specialized knowledge. Partners foster communication and collaboration and build bridges between the relevant stakeholders. There are several typical partners involved in a brownfields redevelopment. For instance, agencies of the federal government, such as US EPA, provide both funding assistance and expertise. Territorial, environmental, and economic development agencies, such as NJDEP, and New Jersey EDA or Housing Authority also bring important resources to brownfield redevelopment projects. Real estate professionals can help communities better understand the realities of the real estate market, and can suggest various incentives that would help make the local brownfields redevelopment projects economically viable. A public-private partnership between the local government and a real estate developer is an effective collaboration for brownfields redevelopment, especially in weak market areas. Universities, they bring it can be a valuable partner. They bring professors, researchers, graduate students that can provide insight and expertise on brownfields related topics. Some universities and colleges host design studios, which students work on a real world redevelopment project. So that's something that can be brought to bear. Other typical partners include bankers and lenders, chambers of commerce, neighborhood associations, nonprofits, environmental consultants, and environmental justice organizations. In some instances, you need to go beyond the usual suspects. So there are other groups and organizations that can add value to your brownfields redevelopment team. They can offer unique and important resources. For instance, local artists and cultural institutions can be great partners in bringing attention to brownfield sites, as well as suggesting creative ways to engage the community and envisioning the property's reuse and creatively marketing the sites. So again, the benefits of creating meaningful partnerships and collaborations. It helps with community engagements. Engagement helps with access, helps you access funding, increases your ability to tackle complex brownfield issues, and it creates avenues in future partnerships for redevelopment. So when you develop your community engagement plan, there's some things that you do want to think about. Who is the community that you are trying to reach out to and engage? You want to know why you're engaging the community. What's the purpose? What are you hoping to achieve by that engagement? How are you going to engage the community? Are they, is going the technical route better? Is in person better? That you need to have a good understanding of who that audience is. You want to know when to engage the community, and essentially the answer to that is early and often. And then what are you going to do with the results of the engagement? You don't want to just do this to say that you did it. You want to make sure that it's meaningful and that that feedback that you do get from the community is incorporated into your project. Successful community engagement empowers citizens. It elevates community spirit. It strengthens social inclusion, and it contributes to meaningful change. You also want to assess where you're at with your project. So, how does that brownfield site fit within the context of the larger community? So what happens is many communities, they have a tendency to become what we call site-centric, and that is they focus only on the brownfield property itself and its associated contamination challenges. But it's important that brownfield practitioners take a step back and first look at how that site fits into the context of the larger community. What you need to do is assess what plans are out there, how they relate to your brownfield site. So for instance, you want to look at municipal master plans. What does that master plan say about the area of the town in which your site is located? Are there any redevelopment plans for the area in which your site lies and relate to your site? Is your site within a vulnerable area, such as one that frequently floods? You want to look at the zoning of your site, what uses are permitted. And placing your brownfield site within the context of that larger community helps you inform the ultimate redevelopment vision for the site. It's also important to find out what actions have already been been taken. So have you done a brownfields inventory and prioritized your sites? Have there been investments in the areas surrounding the sites, such as infrastructure improvements, which might be roadway, rail, utilities, so on and so forth? So, oh, I'm sorry. So then what you want to do is focus on the site itself. You want to find out all that you can about the site. You know, the examples of that would be who owns the site, what's the current use and condition of the site, has there already been an assessment conducted for the brownfield site that indicates contamination, and if you don't own the site, do you have access? You can't assess the site unless you have access to it, and is there already developer interest in the site? Next is important thing is funding. So no brownfield project is funded by a single funding source. They're typically funded by multiple sources, which we refer to as a funding stack. So I have some examples of potential brownfield sources listed on this slide, but it's by no means a comprehensive list on which sources might be brought to bear on any project. You know, it depends on the elements that are specific to your project. For example, you know, a brownfields project might have a pedestrian bridge that's located or accesses the site. Therefore, US DOT funding sources may be applicable to that project. And cobbling these sources together takes some time and effort. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier, implementing good planning practices is extremely important to success. One source of funding that is readily available is NJDEP's HDSRF, or Hazardous Discharge Site Remediation Fund. It's a well-funded program available to communities in New Jersey on a rolling basis, and Rachel Stopper from DEP will touch upon it later during her presentation. EPA also has funding available for brownfields, and they will also be giving an overview of that as well. So again, doing some sound planning tasks at the early stages of a project will serve you well throughout the life of your project. So with that, I'll take a look at our Q&A pane, see if anybody has any questions. Not seeing any, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Frank again. Frank, so it's back to you.
Thank you, Sean, for that introduction. And NJDEP and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency are funding this this virtual workshop. And like myself and my staff that you'll meet later in the workshop, NJDEP and EPA are going to be around to assist you with your brownfields and your brownfield development area work going forward. So I appreciate Sean and New Jersey Institute of Technology and our federal partners at the Environmental Protection Agency for their long-term partnership and their dedication to helping communities across New Jersey going forward with their brownfield sites. So thanks again, Sean. My name is Frank McLaughlin. I manage the Office of Brownfields and Community Revitalization for the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. We're housed in the Contaminated Site Remediation and Redevelopment Program, but we work closely with the Commissioner's Office and with other programs at the department because brownfield sites need a lot of funding, resources, permits, and other things that our office is in a unique position to assist municipalities with in their brownfield challenges. Next slide. So the Brownfield Development Area Program has been around since 2003 and has really a unique track record in taking some of the most challenging sites in the state and developing some of the most valuable local assets across the state. On October 30th of this past year, Commissioner Sean LaTourette announced that we were going to be reopening the Brownfield Development Area Program to new municipalities and redevelopment authorities at the Sayreville Waterfront Brownfield Development Area. That Brownfield Development Area, three of the most challenging sites in the state: 2 Superfund sites and the 418-acre National Lead site, one of the largest contaminated sites, not only in the state, but in the country, with over 2 miles of beautiful frontage along the Raritan River. And if people travel down the Garden State Parkway to the Jersey Shore, they've gone by that site for many years. That site was abandoned for decades, and only with a Brownfield Development Area designation, with a long-term working relationship with the Borough of Sayreville, their redevelopment authority, several developers in this case, were we able to marshal the resources, both technical and financial, to get this project done. And other state and federal agencies also invest in these large Brownfield Development Area projects, in addition to $20 million of hazardous discharge site remediation fund grants from my office. The New Jersey DOT also funded a new exit on the Garden State Parkway, and our sister agency, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, actually just recently, just before the holidays, approved a $400 million application for incentives for building this $2.5 billion mixed-use development called the Riverton Development on the former National Lead site. So this is the type of very challenging sites, but amazing opportunities to transform, in this case, 418 acres of developable land in Sayreville along 2 miles of beautiful Raritan River properties. So that's an exciting project, and that's an example and pretty typical of what our program, the Brownfield Development Program, can offer with this long-term relationship that is set up based on local vision and local redevelopment plans that our office assists in implementing. And this one took 15 long years, and you're gonna hear from my talented staff person, Tony Finley, who managed this site for 15 years to get this project breaking ground just a month or two ago. Next slide, please. So Sean went over what a brownfield site was. What I'll add is that there are over 10,000 brownfield sites in New Jersey alone, ranging from gas stations and dry cleaners all the way up to national lead sites and huge petroleum refineries and other things. A brownfield development area is a area that's defined by at least 2 brownfield sites in a continuous area. It could be more than that. There could be sites separated by roads or waterways or other things, but at least 2 brownfield sites that are contiguous. Boundaries of the brownfield development area that are within a boundaries of a distinct neighborhood. Many of you know communities like Newark, Patterson, Jersey City, Camden, well, they have unique neighborhoods. So the brownfield development area is supposed to match a local redevelopment vision in a distinct neighborhood. The third thing that makes a brownfield development area successful and required for an application that you'll hear later from others of my staff is community support, a redevelopment plan, and also local stakeholders who support turning blighted brownfield sites into community assets. The fourth thing is that we need to establish that the brownfield development result in benefit to public health, safety, and the environment. And taking a blighted site for productive reuses usually does that. But as Sean mentioned near the end, there's a lot of environmental improvements that can be made at these brownfield sites. For instance, the gas station that is shown on this slide in Camden, New Jersey, is now a rain garden, taking flooding, local street flooding burden and taking that stormwater and infiltrating it onto that site. So that's what Camden needed locally because of local street flooding. And that brownfield site became a park with green infrastructure, one of the first in the country, I would add. Next slide. So again, the Brownfield Development Area Program was formed in 2002 and really established in 2003. Again, it's a voluntary partnership. So we enter into a memorandum of understanding to volunteer to work together on the blighted brownfield sites in a neighborhood in a city. A key component of that relationship is a steering committee. And you're going to hear more about the strength of Perth Amboy's steering committee in a little bit. But steering committees work with the state, the municipal government, the redevelopment authorities to help focus attention and support and resources on taking that blighted brownfield area and redeveloping it for productive reuses. Another benefit of the Brownfield Development Area Program is the assignment by DEP, my office, of a single point of contact. And you're going to hear the value of that when we talk about the Perth Amboy success story in a bit. But the value of having an advocate within DEP that can facilitate meetings, that can expedite permits, that can find resources with other state agencies, other federal agencies, and within the DEP is invaluable, as you'll see later in Perth Amboy. And the value also is that we are looking at this site toward redevelopment for productive reuses. So it's not just we're looking to investigate and remediate. We're looking to compress all the phases of investigation and do remediation and redevelopment in one mobilization if possible. And it is often possible to do that so. Next slide, please. So this is a map of New Jersey showing our existing 29 brownfield development areas in 27 municipalities. 2 municipalities, Trenton and Camden, have 2 brownfield development areas. So just our brownfield development areas are covering nearly 300 sites and almost 2,700 acres of blighted properties that could become the next community asset, like I showed you in the Sayreville Riverton slide earlier on the largest contaminated site in Sayreville. And we have similar successes in many other communities across New Jersey. Then I'll share a few of those successes with you. And you'll hear some Perth Amboy successes in a bit. Next slide, Sean. Go to the next slide. Yeah, there you go. Well, I don't want to steal the thunder of the talented Perth Amboy team that's coming up, but this is an example of what we do. And not only did the Brownfield Development Area Program was set up in 2007 with Perth Amboy, again, a voluntary partnership. By the way, we go to the municipality, whether it's Perth Amboy or any other BDA municipality. We come to you. We're supporting your redevelopment plans. One of the many great projects that have been completed in Perth Amboy is the Thomas Mundy Peterson Park, which is on the former General Cable and Duane Marine sites in Perth Amboy. You see the before, you see the after. Part of what our office does, in addition to providing a dedicated case manager that goes to your municipality, is we provide generous hazardous discharge site remediation fund. Sorry for the acronym HDSRF, but nearly $12 million to the city of Perth Amboy on their priority brownfield sites. Tony Finley in my office also helped secure a $14 million settlement with the with the former Sarco property owners. You'll hear more about that project later, and I don't want to go through all the great successes because you'll hear them in a moment. But the Perth Amboy BDA is 16 sites, 300 acres, again strategically located along waterfronts like the Arthur Kill, like the Raritan Bay, like the Raritan River, and also transportation corridors, as you'll hear in a moment. Next slide. So this is the former largest contaminated site in Camden, New Jersey, the 86-acre Harrison Avenue landfill. The city of Camden has received over $40 million in hazardous discharge site remediation fund grants. Nearly $30 million to this site, which was the Kramer Hill Brownfield development area. Now, Camden has lots of brownfield sites and lots of land available for redevelopment, but it's contaminated and challenging to do. There was additional issues in Camden like chronic stormwater flooding, combined sewage flooding, other things that I won't be able to talk about in detail, but this brownfield development area was formed in 2003. The Harrison Avenue landfill, again, being the largest contaminated site in the city, was the priority site within this brownfield development area, the catalyst site. And not only did we successfully remediate and redevelop that site, but during that same 20-year period of the brownfield development area, we brought in over $300 million in New Jersey Water Bank and Environmental Infrastructure Trust funding to basically match infrastructure investments, sewer separation, and capital improvements to the land reclamation that was going on in Camden. Everybody loves to see vertical development in our cities, but it's not possible without land remediation. But in Camden, wasn't possible without very strategic and robust combined sewer, stormwater separation, and capital improvements in Camden's water infrastructure. And this is the kind of projects that our office can work closely with other funding agencies to accomplish. So we could do successful brownfield redevelopment in Camden and some other cities without doing other infrastructure investments. And by the way, we also leveraged over $1 billion in our economic development partners at New Jersey Economic Development Authority in a former program they had, over $1 billion in tax incentives to bring corporate offices to the improved lands with the water infrastructure investments in Camden. Next slide. So there's another very successful brownfield development area we have in the city of Somerville in Somerset County in central Jersey. And so there's a map on the right of the brownfield development area. It's right close to the Somerville train station. And the catalyst site was a landfill, which are always challenging to not only investigate, but also to remediate. But this brownfield development is providing open space, stormwater management, affordable housing, and transit-oriented development, including environmental assets and rehabilitation. So this is another brownfield development that is bringing not only economic development, assets, housing, smart growth, transit-oriented development, but also environmental improvements and assets and open space to the city of Somerville. Next slide. So this is a small brownfield development area called the Haddon Brownfield Development Area in Haddon Township in South Jersey along the Patco corridor, transportation corridor that goes into Philadelphia. Brownfield development area established in 2007. By the way, that brownfield development area has already been fully redeveloped. We took a about a 6-acre set of brownfield sites with the Catalyst site, the DIDE diaper service site, and with $3.5 million of HDSRF grants to the municipality of Haddon Township. That brought in local developers, and now we have, again, transit-oriented development, housing units, and to a walkable downtown, very close to the Paco station at the Westmont Paco station. So now what was the blighted site, kind of a donut in this beautiful Haddon Township community, is now a great asset and affordable housing in many instances to local residents there. Next slide. Another brownfield development area that is undergoing a massive redevelopment right now is the Palmyra brownfield development area that actually both myself and Tony Finley worked on over time. And the two Catalyst sites are now huge. Well, one, the warehouse is opened. The other one, it will be opening later in 2024. So this brownfield development area has received over $5 million in grants, including over $4 million for unexploded ordinances. So these sites were extremely challenging because of, one was a large landfill with illegal dumping, and the other one was a site that had munitions, unexploded munitions throughout the property. So we can help in a variety of ways. We can help with unexploded ordinances. We can help with funding, of course. We can help with very challenging sites that have radiation and other things. And in addition to the warehouse development, which, by the way, those two warehouses will be providing over an increase of 20% of the tax base for the small borough of Palmyra, 102 affordable housing units, 36 new acres of open space, trails to the Delaware River, and the beautiful Palmyra Cove Nature Center. So again, what was the two challenging brownfield sites in Palmyra are now some of the greatest assets in that borough. Next slide. Our program will also work with you on green energy projects and also open space projects. So I want to highlight two projects. One is the National Park landfill. Our office provided nearly $12 million in grants, 10 different grantings for different stages of this landfill investigation and closure. This is a 53-acre parcel in the very small town of National Park in South Jersey. By the way, the town only brings about $1 million in tax revenue. So for a town trying to close a landfill would roughly cost about $30 million. We work with a local developer, and they brought in some fill material and matched with our nearly $12 million in HDSRF grant. The landfill was finally closed this past year in 2023, and a solar field will be installed on the site in 2024, which, by the way, for the town, will end up maintaining not only the landfill cover, but also the trails along the waterways there. Next slide. And we do a lot of, our hazardous discharge site remediation fund program also does a lot of open space projects. In fact, the HDSRF program alone has created 553 acres of new open space on former brownfields and landfills. This site happens to be in Camden, New Jersey. That site to the right, that's the former Camden Lab site, not only contaminated with mercury and other things, but also the largest illegal dumping site in the city. And not only did we address the illegal dumping, working with the Camden County Metro Police Department. So we do, our office works with all partners, including police departments. The gentleman in the center on the slide to the right is the head of the Department of Public Works in Camden. And his staff not only helped clean up the illegal dumping, but has helped maintain security on that site until over $2 million in HDSRF grants and $750,000 in EPA Brownfields grants went to investigate and remediate that site. And now Camden, for the first time in decades, can host football games and soccer matches because they didn't have such facilities before we transformed that Camden lab site into the new ball fields and an expanded and improved Whitman Park. And by the way, once we secured funding for the Camden lab site, Camden County Open Space and DEP Green Acres together put $4 million to rehabilitate the rest of that park, Whitman Park in Camden, which is the most important open space asset in that area of Camden City. Next slide. So this is Tony and other dignitaries, Commissioner LaTourette, and with EPA and Sayreville authorities in the reopening of the former national lead. Speaker Craig Coughlin is there, who offered lunch to Tony Finley, so I had to shut my ears for that comment. But we've worked really closely with Speaker Coughlin and Sayreville, but also Middlesex County and Central Jersey and other partners. So that's what's needed for these projects. And we're going to stick with you for the long haul when we enter into a relationship through the BDA program with you. And our HDSRF program, we've done a recent study with the University of Wisconsin, and for every $1 HDSRF grant, there's been more than $8 of economic output. And I talked about that Sayreville project before, so I want to go on to the next slide. Well, and a lot of people are, everybody's seeing the climate impacts in New Jersey. Whether you live in Somerville, which has had, unfortunately, some repetitive flooding from the recent rainstorms that we've had, or along the Jersey Shore, or our urban tidal cities going from Perth Amboy, Woodbridge to Carteret, Elizabeth, Jersey City, Bayonne. All these are brownfield development area communities. Of course, there's even tidal communities like Camden and Trenton, but we are doing a lot of climate adaptation and climate resiliency investments. I talked about separating sewers. This is the former Harrison Avenue landfill. There's living resilient shorelines. We've done actually more than that in other developments in Camden. Of course, manage stormwater, upgrade the sewer, raise critical assets. We often raise land as part of the remediation if we are in a storm surge zone or within a floodplain. So we will work with you on the climate adaptation and resiliency elements that your town needs to invest in to make new redevelopment safe from the climate changes that are occurring. Next slide. And we appreciate you coming to this workshop, and I'm going to be around for questions later, and I'm going to pass it. We have a break next? No, we have our EPA folks next. So Sean, I'll kick it to you.
Sure.
But as you're kicking it to EPA, I just wanted to mention again, thanks to our partners at the Environmental Protection Agency for not only funding a number of these projects that I showed in my presentation, but ongoing technical assistance to communities with brownfields. And myself, my team at DEP, and NJDEP will be working with EPA to continue technical assistance for brownfield sites and for brownfield development areas. Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome. And I apologize to everybody for the noises that you're hearing. Unfortunately, they're doing construction in an adjacent office to mine. It was unexpected that it was happening today. Yeah, nobody's trying to break into my office. It's just they're hanging sheetrock. So Frank, before I hand it over to EPA Region 2, there is a question.
Okay.
Jim Grant wants to know what resources are there to create community interest in brownfield redevelopment. Our small community continues to allow use of a landfill adjacent to the Delaware River. NJDEP closed the landfill in 1978.
Thank you for that question. So we have done a lot of successful landfill redevelopments, right? But land use is decided at the local level in the state of New Jersey. So the first critical thing is having a vision for that site or that neighborhood, right? I don't know what the municipality is, but Camden wanted to see open space and access in the Kramer Hill neighborhood. Somerville wanted some stormwater improvements, solar on their landfill, and access to the train station. National Park, I showed you, not a brownfield development area, wanted solar to close a landfill and to pay for the ongoing maintenance. Palmyra put warehouses on the landfill because they wanted their tax bases increased. So the first thing is we'd like to know what the local municipality's vision is for the site. And we're happy to have conversations to talk about all the possibilities that landfills can be. Parks, a community center on a landfill. You saw the slides from Camden. We moved the landfill to put a huge community center that serves 8,000 area residents there, right? We recontoured the landfill in Somerville for stream access and then eventually solar. We recontoured the landfill in Palmyra for a warehouse. So we have done a lot of successful landfill redevelopment projects, but it starts with the local municipality, their vision. We grant monies to the municipality so they would be the funding conduit of our grant program. So that's where I would start, but my email address is there, so please email me with your question and we can follow up with your question and also with the municipality's interest in that site.
Okay, great. Thanks. The only thing I would add is to Jim Grant is that you can always reach out to NJIT tab. A lot of times getting a community interested in brownfields redevelopment is a case of just educating them on what brownfields are, what the potential, what the potential is for those sites, what the process looks like. So you can certainly reach out to us and we can certainly collaborate with you and provide your community with training and help build that interest to move the community forward in addressing these types of sites. So with that, what I'm going to do now is turn it. We're going to hear next from Gritsko Erickson. He's from US EPA Region 2, and he's going to talk a little bit about EPA's brownfield incentives. So Gritsko, it's all yours. I'll go to the next slide.
Good morning. Oh, you said you have the slides? Okay, perfect.
Just tell me when you want them advanced.
All right, perfect. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gritsko Erickson. I am a project officer in the Brownfield section of EPA's Region 2. And today I'll be delivering the overview of our program. Primarily, we'll be going over eligibility, funding, and technical assistance. But next slide. So to begin, I'm going to reiterate a little bit with the EPA's definition of what a brownfield is. And that is a property where the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. Next slide. So here we have some images of brownfields. As we can see here, a lot of these sites are industrial. We even have that gas station, but to reiterate once more, brownfields aren't always necessarily industrial sites, and I'll touch up a little bit about that later on in the presentation, but let's continue with the next slide. And here we'll talk about a little bit of the overview of what it is that we do in the Brownfield and Land Revitalization Program. So firstly, We aim to empower states, communities, and stakeholders and economic redevelopment to prevent, assess, safely clean up, and sustainably reuse brownfields. Using grants and technical assistance, we want to provide communities with resources to address health, environmental, and economic risks caused by contaminated properties. We also clarify circular liability protections for those who own, rent, or wish to acquire brownfields. And finally, we do a lot of outreach, convening partners, and building capacity through national training conferences and regional meetings with states, tribes, and territories. Next slide. With that overview of what we do in mind, the main foundation of our program is grants, and grants are how we get all this funding to do these wonderful brownfields activities. There are 5 kinds, the first of which are assessment grants, which provide funding for inventorying, planning, environmental assessments, and community outreach. The second of which is cleanup grants, which provide funding to, well, clean up and do these cleanup activities at brownfield sites owned by the applicant. Third, we have multi-purpose grants, and they provide funding to conduct a range of both eligible assessment and cleanup activities at one or more sites in a target area. Fourth, we have revolving loan funds or RLF grants to provide funding to capitalize loans, which are used to then clean up brownfields. And lastly, we have job training grants, which provide funding to train residents of brownfields communities. Next slide. So now on to eligibility. This is one of the longer slides. Who is eligible to receive this kind of funding? For multi-purpose grants, community-wide assessments, and RLF grants, eligible entities include, and let's start with the government section first. State, local, and federally recognized tribes are all eligible except for Native tribes in Alaska. There's also a range of other entities which are also eligible, and these include general purpose units of local government, land clearance authorities, and other quasi-governmental entities that operate under the supervision and control of a state. More included are redevelopment agencies that are sanctioned by state and regional councils of government. So with the government entities aside, let's move on to the rest of the list. Firstly, Alaska Native Regional Corporations and Alaska Native Village Corporations. Nonprofit organizations described in Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. Limited liability corporations in which all managing members are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Limited partnerships in which all general partners are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And qualified community development entities as defined in Section 45D C1 of the Internal Revenue Code. Next slide. So that previous slide was for multi-purpose community-wide assessments and RLF grants. Cleanup grants have a little bit more in terms of other nonprofit organizations. So the term nonprofit organization is defined as any corporation, trust, association, cooperative, or other organization that is operated mainly for scientific, educational, service, charitable, or similar purpose in the public interest and is not organized primarily for profit. In this definition, nonprofits use net proceeds to maintain, improve, or expand the operation of the organization, even if the organization is not exempt from taxation under 501c3. And more on taxation, individuals for nonprofit organizations and nonprofit organizations exempt from taxation under Section 501c4 that lobby are not eligible for brownfield grant funding from the EPA. That's it for eligibility. Let's continue to the next slide. So at the EPA, we also have the state and tribal response programs. We provide non-competitive grants annually to states and tribes to conduct the following activities: inventory sites on tribal or state land, oversee brownfields resources and enforce authority, provide opportunities for local stakeholder participation in brownfields decisions, and approve site cleanup plans and make sure that cleanup goals are completed. Infrastructure law says $300 million shall be to carry out state and tribal response programs. So there are no changes to underlying circle authority, just more money to do good work. Next slide. So with eligibility out the way, um, let's talk about what kinds of contamination are eligible for funding. And these types of contaminants can be, but are not limited to, heavy metals, petroleum, polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons, volatile organic compounds, brine, lead, asbestos, mold contamination, a site contaminated with controlled substances, e.g., a meth lab. Those can also be brownfields, polychlorinated biphenyl, and finally, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Next slide. And now on the technical assistance, we do this in a few different ways, a few different forms. The first of which is targeted brownfields assessments, or TBAs, and these are conducted by an EPA contractor on behalf of an eligible entity. And TBA services can include site assessments, cleanup options, and cost estimates, as well as community outreach. Funding is available on a rolling basis by region. Next slide. And there's also technical assistance to brownfield communities, or TAP. So our TAP program provides assistance to communities and stakeholders to help address their sites and to increase their understanding and involvement in cleanup, revitalization, and reuse. The TAP program is funded by the EPA and available to all stakeholders. So TAP grant recipients, which are also known as TAP providers, serve as an independent resource and can provide expert technical assistance and guidance to help communities understand acquiring, assessing, cleaning up, and redeveloping brownfields properties, the health impacts of brownfield sites, how science and technology are used for site assessment, remediation, redevelopment, and reuse, and finally, how to comply with voluntary cleanup requirements. For Region 2, our current TAP provider is NJIT, or the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Next slide, please. And now on to land revitalization. This program offers tools and technical assistance that help communities sustainably reuse properties. In this program, this includes developing guides, tools, trainings, and best practices. And the program also provides technical assistance that helps communities clean up and reuse contaminated lands. The Office of Brownfields and Land Revitalization, OBLR, uses contractor support to provide direct technical assistance to communities looking to incorporate sustainable and equitable approaches to their local driven land revitalization projects. Next slide. And so thanks to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we have additional funding available from the fiscal years 2022 to 2026. Here, Congress has made more than $1.5 billion available over 5 years to support communities in their efforts to assess, clean up, and safely reuse brownfields. Of this 1.5 billion, 1.2 billion goes to support brownfields projects via grants and assistance and state and tribal response programs. And these funds are used to provide a range of resources and help communities address the environmental, economic, and social challenges caused by brownfields. Next slide, please. And finally, to wind down with outreach, the EPA's Brownfield program does do a lot of outreach, and the largest of which is the National Brownfields Training Conference. It's held every 2 years and attracts over 2,000 stakeholders in redevelopment and cleanup to share their knowledge about reuse and just celebrate the success of the EPA's Brownfield program. That picture at the bottom, center bottom, is the Region 2 team, right there in a brown suit. And next slide. But yeah, that'll be all for today, and just wanted to end off with the list of staff. Feel free to reach out for what?
Great. Thank you, Gritzko.
Okay, sorry. I froze for a little bit, but
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Were you done? I don't want to cut you off. Okay, yeah, your audio is going a little bit. Anyway, so I just want to do, before we go to the next presentation, I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, to please put them in the Q&A pane feature of your WebEx. And what we're going to do now is shift over to, let me escape this. Okay.
I think we have Perth Amboy up.
We have Perth Amboy. So what I'm gonna pass it
Send it
over
to me,
now
Sean.
to, it's gonna go to Tony, correct?
You can send it to me first.
Oh, okay, we're gonna have Frank, I'll pull up the presentation. Frank, you'll introduce Tony and we'll
Yep.
take it from there.
Thank you, Sean. I have the pleasure of not only introducing, but also for many years working with the city of Perth Amboy and their stakeholders for the Brownfield Development Area Program. And what makes this BDA program work so well is first, having a very close working relationship with the city. My staff member, Tony Finley, who you see in a moment, is working closely with, actually is, Mayor Cobb is his third mayor he's been working with. We've had a seamless relationship with their redevelopment team, with their economic development team, and you'll hear Tashi Vasquez give remarks in a few moments, but we have worked seamlessly with various city government leaders, various agencies within Perth Amboy, the County of Middlesex, and this is what makes the program work. You'll also hear the importance of a strong steering committee. Joe Hochreiter is going to say some remarks in a few moments. Joe is really one of the smartest environmental professionals in the state and has provided great guidance to the city and DEP navigating all the investigation and remediation challenges to get to redevelopment. And so having a strong steering committee and a steering committee chair like Joe Hochreiter is invaluable to the success of the Brownfield Development Area Program. And you'll also hear some remarks in a moment from Will Kurtzenberger from the company Topology, which is a planning and landscape architecture firm out of Newark, New Jersey. And Topology has been really terrific in helping us integrate natural features with redevelopment and also making good projects great. You know, where to design certain elements, how to integrate elements across from the site and into the community. So it's a really strong redevelopment team in Perth Amboy, and that's why the Brownfield Development Area has been so successful. So thank you to the team, and it's going to be a great presentation, and I hope other municipalities will learn a lot from the lessons in Perth Amboy. So I'm going to introduce my colleague, Tony Finley, who works in the Office of Brownfield and Community Revitalization with me and has been the Brownfield Development Area project manager in Perth Amboy since 2007. Take it away, Tony. Tony, you're muted.
Hey, am I good now?
There you go. You're
Okay,
perfect.
great. Again, I am Tony Finley. I'm out of the Office of Brownfields. I work with Frank. I am the project manager assigned to Perth Amboy. And what I'm hoping to do today is introduce what we have been doing in Perth Amboy, and hopefully lessons learned, and everybody could benefit from that. But before I get started, I want to know if
Tony, you have a little echo, so maybe Sean can mute everybody else,
yeah, Sean,
including the other speakers.
better now? I'm still getting an echo.
You're better right now to me, Tony.
Okay. So what I would like to know if Joe, Tashi, and Will, if you guys could come on the screen so they could get an idea who our team is, and then we're going to get into the presentation so that we could benefit from everybody. Again, my objective here is to demonstrate how the BDA has been very effective in helping Perth Amboy with the redevelopment objective. The first person I want to well, let me just.
Hey, Tony, you're still having an echo. Do you want to come in my office to give your presentation?
Yeah. Okay, guys.
Sorry,
just give me a-
everybody.
Yeah, because the echo is bothering me too.
Yeah, come on in my office, please, Tony.
Tony, you might have two screens up. You might be signed in twice. So if you
Oh, he
exit out
is
of one of
signed in
them,
twice.
He is signed in twice. He's showing twice.
Okay, so how do I get out of that, guys?
you maybe exit out of one of them.
All right, start again, Tony.
All right, you're good now.
We're not hearing you.
Unmute yourself, Tony.
Okay, how is that, everybody?
There you go.
Yeah, no echo. You created your own echo, Tony.
Okay, guys. So what I want to do is I want to introduce the folks that's on the team. It's Tashi Vasquez from the city. We have Joe Hawkrider from First Environmental, and then we have William Kurtensberg from Topology. Let me start off by bringing on Tashi. She's the next presenter. Tashi's going to talk about the vision of Perth Amboy. She's going to share her economic and redevelopment vision of Perth Amboy and how the city's BDA designation has been instrumental with helping them achieve that goal. Tashi, are you on?
So Tony, and unfortunately, Tashi has come down with an illness today and is not going to be able to join us. She's asked that I
You could.
cover her portions here.
Okay, so before you do that, Will, can we pull up the next slide with Tashi's slide, please?
Well, Tashi was going to be given presenter so she could show her slides. So Will, do you have to those slides?
Yes, hold on.
I believe they were in Canva. So what we'll do is make you a presenter and then you can share your screen.
Okay.
Fatima, if you can make Will a presenter.
Yeah, and while Will is doing that, let me just tell you a little about Tashi. Tashi recently came to the city as the executive director of PARA, the Perth Amboy Redevelopment Authority. So she has been very instrumental. She's also the director of the Perth Amboy Office of Economic and Community Development. So that kind of experience has been very valuable to us in the BDA because she understands exactly what is going on in terms of the redevelopment vision for the city, and also she has been a longtime resident of Perth Amboy too. So that has been very helpful with getting, her, being instrumental with getting the BDA going and helping it to really work for them. So with that, Will, you want to take it?
Sure. I haven't gotten should I have gotten a notification now that I'm the host and able to share content?
We see and hear you loud and clear, Will, but yeah, you have to get
I'm getting anything yet.
get you ability to show your slides.
Now, Will, you should have received a notification.
Regrettably not. I have the presentation as a PDF. Would I be able to perhaps send it to one of you all to just go
Sure.
through the slide deck?
Send it to me, svroom@njit.edu.
Okay.
While Will is trying to get that up and running, let me talk a little about the Perth Amboy BDA. I've been involved with the Perth Amboy BDA since 2007. It's probably one of the most successful BDAs in our office. And I really think the reason for that is because of the partnership we have, the team we have, the folks that we have involved in it. The city from PARA, from the redevelopment agency has just been phenomenal. Always there, always ready to work. Just, basically just telling me, Tony, this is what we want to do. This is our vision. How can we get this done? How can the BDA help us? We need funding here. We need technical assistance here. We need technical guidance. And that's where we come into play. again, you know, it's a very robust BDA. We meet every quarterly. We have Joe Hawkrider, which he's going to talk next, and he's going to tell you what's involved in this BDA. We have brought a lot of funding to this BDA, a lot of technical guidance, and so forth. So we'll get into that later. So let William jump in here and do his thing. Go ahead, Will.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sean, for pulling up this deck here. I'm sorry for these technical difficulties here, but good morning, everyone. My name is William Kurzenberger. As mentioned, I'm a redevelopment planner with the planning firm Topology out of Newark, New Jersey. And I've been working with or in the city of Perth Amboy in one capacity or another for about 10 years now. As I said, unfortunately, Tashi Vasquez, who I know really wanted to be here today as well, is feeling rather ill. So please bear with me as I fill in here for her content, a little off the fly here. But I could probably talk Brownfields and Perth Amboy for hours if you let me. So I'll do my best here. If you go ahead down, I think two slides here to the third slide. So I think Tony's done a great job of introducing all of us already. So the importance of the BDA in Perth Amboy can't possibly be overstated, in my opinion. Perth Amboy is a city with a long and a proud history predating that of the nation's. But that history also comes with some unique challenges. The city seal bears the words Portus Optimus, and indeed, the city has been an important waterfront hub of activities since its days as the capital of East Jersey before the Revolution, and on through multiple waves of immigration and the Industrial Revolution, in which Perth Amboy was a prominent location for manufacturing and distribution. And this legacy has left the city with several significant brownfield sites at our former industrial sites, particularly around the waterfront, which is now some of the most valuable real estate in the city. So many of these sites have sat vacant for generations, sapping the city of much needed revenue, waterfront access, and as like I said, that valuable real estate that could really help get the city back up and thriving. What the BDA in the city has allowed us to do here is open up funding sources and technical assistance that has helped us get over that hurdle of the upfront remediation costs that are frequently so great that they can prevent any future resource of these sites from getting off the ground, and infusing enough public funding to help tip the city, tip the scales to where private investment's been able to take the helm and transform these sites from public health hazards to productive areas with immense community benefits. Go ahead and slide down, Sean. Touch on a few of these benefits. The removal or management of contaminants in and of itself is an important goal for the protection of both our residents, population, but all the health of the regional environment around us as well. Perth Amboy occupies a very significant place environmentally at the where the Raritan River opens up to the Raritan Bay and also mixes with the Arthur Kill along the east, surrounded by water on three sides. The redevelopment of these sites has also helped stabilize the city's tax base through ratables. These investments are bringing in hundreds of jobs, help this economically disadvantaged community fund the creation of much needed open space, connectivity improvements, and other infrastructural improvements that I'll speak on a bit later on. Go ahead and scroll down. It's a very exciting time to be involved in redevelopment in Perth Amboy. Right now, we have around 21 projects at every stage of the redevelopment process, from investigation through construction. And I am incredibly proud of what the redevelopment agencies and its partners, both locally with the BDA and the state and the EPA as well, has been able to achieve throughout the years. We're talking over $800 million of private investment, 300 acres of brownfields being remediated, approximately 2,000 new jobs for city residents, and millions of dollars in new tax revenue. Go ahead, Sean. I'm going to take a look at some specific projects. First off here, the Elm Street Logistics Center. This was a formerly the Jerdau steel smelting location, as well. Before that, the Raritan Copper Works back through the 1800s. This is a 90 acres of very highly contaminated property, and really a great example of how the BDA and the DEP were able to add value to this project, really helping this developer come up with some outside the box thinking in terms of how to handle the contaminants and how to handle the stormwater management on this waterfront site, that allowed us to take acreage that would have otherwise, I think, been lost to some of those features, and really allowed them to contribute back to the city in the terms of some rather significant open space investments, which I'll touch on a bit later on. But very significant warehousing and distribution center, about 1 million square feet, 600 or 400 to 600 potential jobs, and a big component of the city's aspirations to connect the entirety of its waterfront through a pedestrian waterfront promenade. This was one of the big missing pieces of that, running from the Victory Bridge over the Raritan River to the Outer Bridge crossing up across the Arthur Kill. You may hear me reference that one or two more times as we go, as such a significant planning goal for the city. Go ahead, Sean. Brinkmanere Park, this is a project near and dear to my heart, and that I suspect will be, I suspect environmental professionals will be citing this as a case study in remediation for years to come. What we first thought was going to be a fairly straightforward remediation process started turning up unexploded ordinances and flammable soils and a number of things that we had to contend with here. Thankfully for us, this project is recognized as both a high priority for both the NJDEP, who have invested several $1 million of funding through the HDSRF program and the NRD program, as well as the EPA, who have assumed at this point the remediation work, given the level of complexity involved with these contaminants in such a highly populated and congested area. But once done, this will be a world-class waterfront park. Oh, there we go. With a number of active and passive amenities to brag of. Go ahead, Sean. Eport Phase 2, another incredibly contaminated property in the city, a former Sarco site there, with again, another great example of how the advocacy of the professionals that were are made available to us through the BDA program really formed this very successful partnership with this developer to help them achieve quite a bit of savings that got invested into this project and help make it the reality and the success story that it has been for the city. This is just phase two of a two-phase project. If you count the first phase, we're talking over 2 million square feet of warehousing and distribution. 100 million investment, hundreds of jobs, and reconnection of neighborhoods and street grids that hadn't been connected to most of the city's activities for, I would say, at least a generation. You got it, Sean? The Gateway here, a project located in a very prominent location of the city. This one hasn't begun construction yet, but has gone quite a bit down the line in the planning phase. Talking, as with almost all of these sites, a pretty complicated remediation picture here. This one involved a landfill closure as well. Significant investment in terms of both the remediation costs and property acquisition costs here, $54 million. Once again, it's anticipated this will bring in hundreds of jobs, as well as several acres of open space. And 9.4 acres, right? So if you can tell, that's a very dark green segment of the site plan right there that'll be made available to the city, pad ready for development in any way that we see fit. So we're very excited for the potentials of this site and how it will enhance this very prominent entrance to the city. Gotcha. So as I mentioned before, we have projects at every stage of the redevelopment process, and we have no intentions of slowing down either. As we presently have 8 new sites either under investigation as an area in need of redevelopment or actively having redevelopment plans drafted for them. This is truly a transformative time for the city of Perth Amboy. Go ahead, Sean. As we continue to make such great progress, our BDA continues to evolve with us. This map here depicts changes that we're making to our BDA boundaries, getting successfully completed projects off the books, and welcoming new projects to benefit from everything that the BDA membership can avail them of. And this turnover to me is really a testament to the success of the BDA program that is getting the city to a place where it's no longer needed, where significant properties no longer need this kind of public assistance and funding. And the benefits of the BDA membership are so compelling and so easy for us to sell, if you will, for us that getting new developers on board to join up is again, it's a pretty easy sell, and the benefits have been the self-evident in the work we've done here. So that's it for me for now. I will go ahead and pass it off to our BDA coordinator, Joe Hochreiter, to talk about some of the unique features of the BDA.
Okay, before we jump in, let me introduce Joe. Joe has been with this project with the BDA project since its inception. He's the one who wrote the BDA application for the city of Perth Amboy. He manages the BDA, and Joe is a principal scientist. He's a professional geologist, as well as many other things. He and I had worked closely on this project from the beginning, and this BDA, and we just, just love the success and just the collaboration and the partnership just had brought this to this, made this BDA, in my judgment, one of the best BDAs in our office. Joe, with that, you ready to jump in?
Joe, you just need to unmute yourself.
All right, can you see? Yep, you can see me, and I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can hear you.
We can hear you, but we don't see
Hear
you. Oh,
you.
there, now
There
we
you
see you, Joe.
All right, good. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to ask if we can go back to the prior slide for a minute. This is a representation of something that we do periodically with the BDA, where we remove sites that have been redeveloped. We bring new sites into the process. So you can see the color coding in the agenda or in the legend. I want to tell you a little story. Larry Jacobs, an attorney at Wilentz Goldman Spitzer, and I, on behalf of a client back in 2006, applied for this new thing called a Brownfields Development Area designation. For a pair of sites, the blue and the yellow ones in the northeast corner of that figure that you can see. The yellow is phase 1 E-Port. The blue is phase 2 E-Port that Tony just talked about. The developer did this for the sole purpose of bumping up the merits of a New Jersey EDA loan application. And then they never executed the loan. They didn't need it. So we had this designation that we had competed for. What were we going to do with it? And as it turns out, what we did with it was we worked with the para-designated executive director at the time, who was Helga Van Eckert, and the city government, and we started bringing additional sites into this BDA. In 18 years that I've been coordinating this since the beginning in 2006, we've added a dozen large-scale brownfields development sites. We've remediated a number of them. Most of them have gone into redevelopment. Those in yellow are being removed because they're success stories. And in 2024, we're going to have the largest number of active sites in redevelopment ever in the BDA's history. So for an accidental falling into the BDA program, I kind of think we did pretty well. Now, I'm going to go off script for about a minute because Tony talked about the Palmyra BDA down in South Jersey. And I want to emphasize something that the state was able to do. In fact, it was instrumental in getting that whole thing going. I was representing a private developer who's done work in Perth Amboy. And Tony Finley took it upon himself, working with the city government down there, to try to get people interested in this Palmyra piece of property on the waterfront. This piece of property is really interesting because they talked about unexploded ordnance on this site. During World War II, Pennsylvania actually bombed New Jersey. And that says, what are you talking about? Well, it actually happened. The Frankfurt Arsenal in Philadelphia actually was developing munitions, and they would test some of these munitions by firing them over the Delaware River onto this site in New Jersey. And it was in a kind of an odd location. It's on the waterfront, but it wasn't near a major highway. And a lot of the developers that I worked with weren't really interested in the site. But Tony was determined to find a path for getting that site into redevelopment. And it was his persistence, coupled with people like Frank and people above Tony, that allowed him to do this, to get that project going. In my opinion, no one else could have, the private sector alone would not have made that redevelopment happen. It happened for one principal reason, and that was Tony and the Office of Brownfields Reuse was determined to help Palmyra get this thing off the ground. And I think that's a story that is really important. You can go to the next slide. because of the way we formed the BDA, our membership structure is extremely different. Our steering committee isn't of city government. I am a consultant. My company is Senior Environmental Consulting. And basically, we set up a membership model where my clients are the DEP, Office of Brownfields, the City Redevelopment Agency, and then each of the active redevelopers that are working on sites in any given year. What that does is it puts the developers, that gives them a seat at the table for directing what the BDA does, in addition to the city, which is a major player, and the DEP. In this structure, we work hard to prioritize access to things like HDSRF funding. It's largely for city and county projects. We have a project that Will talked about, that the unexploded ordnance site in Perth Amboy, where US EPA is instrumental right now in dealing with that contamination, because we will not, the city will redevelop that site. So it's a public funded effort, and there isn't private money like most of our projects to drive that. US EPA involvement is critical in getting the contamination off that site so that we can start to redevelop. We work very effectively in sharing regulatory lessons learned among the developers. The Office of Brownfield's Reuse assigns a seasoned site remediation case manager. That's in this case, Tony Finley. And that person does all kinds of things to help individual projects succeed in the DEP system. Permit coordination, both land use, waterfront permit, site remediation permits. We get real-time feedback from the department with caveats, which I'll talk about in a minute. We get oversight of the publicly funded work, the HDSRF funded work. The state is directly involved in that. And we coordinate as needed with EPA, the NRD trustees, and a whole host of things. These projects would not succeed without this partnership with the city. And in my view, from a regulatory perspective, most importantly, the work that OBRR does. Next slide. You're not going to get me to speak at a program without talking about some things I'd like to see optimized. So everybody's talking about how great everything is, and this is a tremendously valuable program. But I also want to bring up just a couple things. We have one site in the BDA, the phase 1 ePort site, that is built, it's successful, everybody loves it. In the RAO, response action outcome, which is sort of the final document that says, yeah, you've cleaned the site up. In the RAO review process, after everything was done, the state decided to go back to work that was done in 15 years prior. And even though everything was approved at that time by the DEP decided they wanted to revisit things. And I have a real problem with the DEP doing that sort of thing. When you have a seasoned site remediation case manager working interactively, as we do on these projects, I would love to advocate for a real-time audit process so that that person's empowered to do most of that audit work in real time, so that we don't end up in a situation after the fact where the job's completed and somebody's second guessing the LSRP, in my view, needlessly. I don't think it makes sense. I also liked when there was a tighter relationship between the Office of Brownfields and the Community Collaborative Initiative program that largely Frank started. That program had tremendous merits, and right now they're separated. I'd like to see them come back. And Frank wouldn't say that, but I will, because I think it would be a much better way of focusing attention on municipalities that need coordinated help, not only in the site remediation area, but also in the quality of life area. And that's it for me.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. And as I was stating in the beginning, Joe and I have been working on this project for many years since the inception. Joe has done a phenomenal job. His management of the BDA is a little different than the chairman of the steering committee. But this, I think, because of his unique role or his way of managing the BDA under the purviews that he had, that we established way back, has really paid off tremendously, because he's dedicated to the project. He makes sure everything is on board. He calls me up if he needs anything. He's always, you know, pushing me to, to get this done, to keep an eye on this VDA, and to just, let's get it going and moving it forward. So Joe, I just want to thank you for that. And for the folks out there, one of the key to having a successful VDA is to make sure you have somebody managing it, just like in anything else. If you have somebody up front who's managing and keeping an eye on everything, things get done. And this is what happens in this VDA. So with that, I think the next presenter would be Will. Will, do you want to come in? I know you batted for Tashi, but maybe you want to say maybe one or two more things before I jump in and close this end up. So can we have Will come back up for a few seconds?
Sure. And Sean, can you take us to the next slide?
The next slide, yeah. You might have to go ahead, because I think Will is after me. So keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
There we go.
Okay, that's you, right? Yeah.
Back one more.
One more.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. So before you get started, again, like I was stating, Bill is work with topology. He's a planner that works closely with the city. So that's his involvement. And as a result of he being a planner, working closely with Tashi, that's how he became involved and become more knowledgeable on BDA and what the BDA has to offer. Go ahead, Will.
Thank you, Tony. So as Frank mentioned before, we pride ourselves in making these good projects great through thoughtful design and integration into the areas of the city that can offer some really unique and valuable amenities, employment opportunities, transit hubs, and other things are so valuable for our residents. This map here is it's from a planning document that we produced back in 2015 that envisioned citywide revitalization through improved connectivity, through creative placemaking, recreational and open space enhancements, and more. I've included this here, and we're gonna keep it up in the background as I go through some of these projects, just to demonstrate. And since this plan's inception, not that long ago, through the work of the BDA and our partners, we've been able to achieve much of what this plan sought out to accomplish. We're talking about in a city where around 30% of households don't own a vehicle. We've been able to add walkways, accessible jobs, reconnected street grids, including what will be an unbroken waterfront promenade extending along the entirety of the city's waterfront, from the Victory Bridge to the Outer Bridge crossing, to the city, and in a city that's by Green Acres standards has a deficit of over 100 acres of open space. We've been able to add over 35 acres since the time that the last recreation element was drafted alone. And in a city where part of the infrastructure for stormwater management can be hundreds of years old, where we're digging up things that still have brick lining in it, and is one of the few CSO communities left in the state, and I think the only one in this particular watershed. We've been able to upgrade that infrastructure, make the city more resilient for storm events and flooding events. Go ahead, Sean. Put this up here as well, just to inform a bit about my own personal planning approach in terms of the quality of life of residents and their health outcomes. A lot of attention is paid towards the individual behaviors of people. Are they eating right? Are they getting enough exercise? Things along those lines. Here, a big part of what I see our job is to provide the stage that enables folks to pursue those healthy lifestyles and well-being. They're making sure that parks and open spaces are easily accessible, that folks have opportunities to access transit, employment opportunities, that they have spaces for buildings that social support. There's places that people can gather, can enjoy cultural events and a lot of other unique things that the city has to offer. And that we're being responsible stewards of the natural environment, the air we breathe, the water that the folks recreate in as well. And go ahead, Sean. Thank you. Starting at the southwestern corner of the city, the Gateway project, which I mentioned before as an upcoming warehousing and distribution site, will also feature over 9 acres of public open space that will offer what I'm sure will be very impressive river views with some nice passive amenities to complement that as well. And new pedestrian connectivity from these neighborhoods, which I'll say through the nature of these waterfront industrial sites and the New Jersey Transit rail line as well, have been cut off from a lot of the city's recreational amenities that are frequently concentrated along the waterfront for quite some time. Projects like this have been able to avail those residents of new, safe pedestrian connectivities to those areas of the city, which is quite valuable. Go ahead. Riverwall Crossing, the fairly new site within the BDA. This is going to offer 2 acres of public open space with more active recreational amenities as part of this multi-family housing project. Notable through this project, as well as the actual reconnected street grids running through the center of this project, that for both vehicular and pedestrian traffic will make those connections from those residential neighborhoods to the city's waterfront all the easier. And next slide. The Elm Street Logistics Center, that's the former Jerdao Ameristeel site. As I mentioned before, the DEP and the BDA's involvement in this allowed a lot of spatial efficiencies, if you will, that led to the creation here of over 9 acres of public space. It was an important missing link, if you can see this right down here by along the Raritan River of the city's waterfront promenade. And The site also features a new outdoor performance venue that backs up along the Raritan River, and new offices for the city's Office of Recreation inside one of the former Raritan Copperworks building, which I think is a great and underrated historical reuse project there. Go ahead and next slide, Sean. This project's been mentioned a few times now, the Brinkwinier Park project. We've spoken about the environmental remediation challenges here pretty thoroughly. But I just want to underscore that, again, once completed, this is going to be a very valuable open space amenity for the city right along the Raritan River. We'll feature active components such as a splash park, a skate park, and some basketball courts, as well as some spaces for passive enjoyment and reflection, some barbecue stations, as well as a monument to the Brinkwinier battalions for whom the park now bears its name. For one of the cities, to honor one of the city's most prominent historic residents, it's Thomas Mundy Peterson. For those of you who may not know, the first African American to cast a legal ballot within the United States, and a proud Perth Amboy resident. This project here, an example of a very successful partnership between the city, Middlesex County, and the state and the BDA for the funds that's availed through to us for the cleanup of this site. This is a 8.5 acre site that features another missing link to that waterfront promenade, as well as some very, very nice athletic fields and facilities, comfort stations there along the Arthur Kill waterfront. Thank you, Sean. And finally, here, while maybe not as exciting as some of the pretty park pictures that I could show, I still think it's very significant, as we're talking several thousand new feet of sidewalk connectivity with the seating and landscaping here for a part of the city that has been disconnected for at least a generation, with new, not just sidewalks, but also seating and appropriate landscaping as well, that will hopefully make these jobs all the more accessible for city residents, along with several contributions in the millions for open space funding and for public safety provisions. Those are just a few of the examples, but again, I don't think I can overstate just how valuable these partnerships and the BDA participation has been for bringing these to where they are today.
Good. Thank you, Will. Sean, can you go back up to my slides? A couple of slides above, it'll be above William's slides. Yes, I think that's where it starts. Again, I want to thank Joe and Will, and Tashi's not here, for being part of this presentation and also for working closely with me in Perth Amboy. Again, as I stated before I get into my presentation, this is a phenomenal BDA, and I really think it's because of partnership and the folks that we have working on the project. Let me just, before I get into it, let me just talk quickly about me a little and what our background is. And this is not only with me, this is pretty much for the folks in our office. You know, I'm assigned to the Perth Amboy BDA among several others in the state. I have over 30 years of experience working on brownfield projects. I work on a wide range of brownfield projects that involve remediation and redevelopment of parks and open space, remediation and redevelopment of commercial, industrial, and residential facilities, mixed use redevelopment, like the big one we talked about earlier, or like Frank showcased in Saraville, $2.3 billion, redevelopment of 400 acres. And I look at that project, that big mixed use project, as we built in a city within a borough. And this site was so complex in contamination. Wherever I look, I found contamination. And the biggest one is radiological contaminants, which by far just add, just your remediation costs just went up tenfold. So, that's the kind of projects we worked on. I worked on a marina project, ferry projects, natural gas power plant. We built a natural gas power plant in Woodbridge, which was again another phenomenal project. With that BDA, we work on landfills, UXOs, munitions, radiological contaminants. So that's the kind of experience we have in the Office of Brownfields. And every one of us don't have that kind of experience, but we work so closely. Our office is small, so if I'm working on a project and I haven't worked on that kind of contaminants or that kind of complexities, I just walk down to the next cubicle and say, hey, you worked on this project, tell me about it. What are the unknowns, or what's the hurdles I'm going to have to overcome to get this project moving? So, we are a tightly knit group. We're highly specialized. We have expertise in remediation, landfill remediation and redevelopment, as well as where the money is. Rachel runs our HDSF office. So, one of the biggest resources we bring to the BDA is funding. And I don't have to run downstairs or upstairs. She's right next door. I'll just run right over there and I'll touch base with her and I'll ask her, is this project, is it going to, make the HDS? Can we get funding for it? And what is required, and how can we get this, and how can we move it quickly? And these are the type of things we do in our office that makes BDA designation so valuable and successful. So John, can I jump into the next slide? Okay, here's, again, I want to talk about the BDA designation and what we do here. So each BDA is assigned a point of contact, a single point of contact. We refer to it as a BDA project manager. And that project manager is from the beginning, from cradle to grave. Whatever the project is, we're going to jump on it and we're going to try to do whatever we can to make it successful. I work with the BDA PM, he works closely with the municipalities on all matters related to remediation and redevelopment. And in the BDA, and I'll just sidetrack for a minute, the BDA has a boundary. Like Perth Amboy BDA, they have a boundary, and every site within this boundary is considered BDA. But there's a lot of times that Perth Amboy, Tashi, or will call me, or even Joe, and they'll say, listen, we work on this project, Tony. We understand it's outside the BDA, but can you help us? And I don't see no big deal. What can I do for you? If it's a phone call, if it's a project, you want me to go rattle somebody's cage because the permit has been sitting there too long, or land use, you can't get them to the table, then I just step up and I just bring them to the table, and we just try to do what we got to do to get it done. Because it's not, I guess what I'm saying, and I don't know if I should say this too loud because Frank would probably, get a little annoyed with me, but I mean, it's a relationship. I'm dealing by being the BDA PM on your project. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the only project I'm going to work on or could help out. If I could help out on other projects you're working on, I'll be happy to do so. Another thing that we do here as the BDA designated, I coordinate all meetings with stakeholders. I bring everybody to the table that I think is going to be affected or should be at the table so we can make decisions and get the project moving. Another thing we do is I run interference internally and externally and matters related to BDA projects. You're always going to run into a hiccup. Something is just not going to get done or untimely. With a lot of these BDA projects, they're very, time sensitive, but that's not the real word I want to use. They're really financially sensitive because these developers that are, at the table or who are working on these projects or came to the municipality for whatever reason, they have skin in the game, they have money on the street, and they just can't be sitting around waiting for a permit to take 2 years to get approved. So those are the type of things that the BDA project running. We'll run interference. We'll go over and try to figure out what's the status of this permit, what's the status of the review, and we'll, as the BDA single point of contact, we would try to move that quicker because that's adds significant value to a redevelopment project or remediation project. And we got to realize too, when these redevelopers go out there and they want to take on these projects, they have time, they have money, and they have schedule that they have to keep, because every time that schedule slip, it's costing them a ton. And a lot of times, we don't want to put them in a point where they'll just walk away from the project. And that happened in the past. But these are the type of things that we do, or the values we bring as a BDA to your city. One of the things we do is we work very, very closely with the municipality and the redeveloper to identify and leverage funding. We have the HDSR funding, it's in our program, so we have a lot of, we have a lot of access to it. We have a good relationship with the HDSR coordinator, and we could talk to them, we could find out what's the status, how quickly we have to get this over to EDA, how quickly we have to move this thing through the process. So those are some of the things, but we have other funding sources too. Our office sits under New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. We have one of our folks in our office sits on the board. So there's a lot of things that goes on there. There's a lot of funding on that end. They're not grants, but they're low interest loans. So those are other fundings that we could leverage and bring to the table as a BDA. And again, we work closely with the iBank. So there's a funding out there too. We have projects where we had to go out and leverage funding from the iBank. And a lot of the funding right now, because the funding is so good, a lot of it is forgiveness. But there again, that's another source. We work closely with Green Acres. Our office, our BDA project managers was able to leverage Green Acres money for BDA projects. Again, we internal, so we could run interference. We could know what's going on. We could know when the deadlines is. We could push certain things. So those are some other leverages we could do. We work closely with land use. Very, very close, because a lot of these projects involve land use approvals or review. And they have a time clock, but we could make a phone call. Again, another thing we could do here that a BDA project manager, a lot of sites, when you redevelop, you need fill, clean fill, or alternative fill. We are working on projects, so we know where a lot of the fill material is. We work with the dredging office and land use closely. So we could always call and say, hey, where is the next source of clean fill that you might have that we could have access to? And these are the things we do as a BDA project manager. We at the table, we are your partner. We will get things done. We will do whatever we can. If we can't get it done, we will get the right people at the table. And the next one, table. We get the right folks at the table. We work closely with the LSRPs on decisions and remediation, redevelopment of decisions and approval. We don't give approvals and we don't make, but we at the table so we could get them feedback. We could say, yes, we think that's a good way to go. Yes, this is something we could probably look into. I could get the right folks at the table. We could talk about it in more detail. So these are the things that we as a BDA project manager bring to the municipality who has that BDA designation. Let me jump on the next slide. Next slide. Okay. Again, and I kind of talked about it, but no, not yeah. Let me talk about the value and benefits of the real. Well, let me really break it down and tell you what I think the value and the benefit of a BDA. The partnership that we have with the municipality. We your partner. We at the table. We're gonna listen to you. We're not gonna tell you what to do. You're gonna tell us what your redevelopment plans are, your initiative, what you want to accomplish or succeed at. And then we're going to listen to you, and we're going to go out and we're going to tell you, okay, this is what you can do environmentally. And a lot of times the environmental is the biggest unknown. So once you pin that down, you could probably move forward with your redevelopment, or if you have to tweak it here or there, you could do that. But the big advantage is I'm at the table with you, and I could sit down, I could hear you, and I could give you my intake with my experience. And even if I don't know or I could come back in, I could talk to somebody else. If it's a landfill, I have a landfill expert working right here in our office. I'll go right over there and talk to him. If it's somebody in enforcement, we have somebody who used to be in enforcement, and if there's an enforcement issue, I could sit down with her and I say, listen, I have this enforcement issue. What's the way you think is the best for me to address it? So we have a lot of those things that we could just come back. I could find the answers and then come back to the table and tell you, this is what I think we could do. Again, another benefit or value is an input, and I'm accessible. You could call me. You know, we don't have to, you know, you don't have to wait till we have our quarterly meetings. You could call me anytime and say, Tony, I'm working on this project, or Tony, the developer wants to meet with you. I go, fine, let's go there. Now, let me just share a real quick story. I was working on the phase 1 E-Port site with Joe Hawkwright. That was the first site in the mix. And the site was contaminated by Arsarco. And the redeveloper was about to, they was going to go bankrupt, and one of the redevelopers wanted to get involved in the bankruptcy. And Joe, help me here, because I'm not saying it right, but we wanted to make sure that he was included in the bankruptcy so that he could have funds, or Joe, what is the right word for that?
Yeah, what we did was there was the property was in receivership. It was in the federal bankruptcy system. And we had an opportunity as the redeveloper to make a claim. We made certain that the department that had rights in that bankruptcy proceeding also participated. And we won't bore you with all the details, but at the end of the day, there was a significant amount of money that was released from the bankruptcy proceedings that sold the property. And that was enough money to probably remediate at least half of the liability for the legacies.
I could take it from you. So, and that's what that's what I look at. We were able to go to the bankruptcy and be included in the settlement. And as a result of the BDA and being involved with Brownfield has a designation, I was able to reach out to a DAG and ask him to file a claim. Long story short, he filed a claim. When the settlement was reached, DEP was awarded $14 million as money set aside to remediate that site. We had a tough time keeping a redeveloper on the site because the site was very complex. But once we had that $14 million, we didn't have a hard time getting a developer, because I told him this is the money we have set aside to remediate the site. So we had the developer. He came in, he looked at it, he said, good, I want to be involved in this site. So he went out to his lender to look for his funding. And when his lender, then he reached back out to me and he said, Tony, I'm dealing with Goldman Sachs, and they would like to fly some folks in from the corporate office in Houston to talk to you to get that comfort letter, to learn more about the project. Long story short, they came in, I talked to them, I told them everything was great. We're a partner. This site has got $14 million set aside. It's going to has to be used towards the remediation of the site. The developer came back to me like a week later and he said, you know what, Tony? Goldman Sachs don't want to lend us the money. They want to be a partner in this project. And again, this is the value that and the benefit of a BDA. By the BDA project manager at the table talking to the bank or the lenders and talking to everybody and show that this is a partnership, they felt very comfortable and they moved forward with the project. Long story short, the project has since been developed. I think it's 3 warehouses. I think it brought over 3,000 jobs, or close to 3,000 jobs to Perth Amboy, and I think the ratables is like significant. So that again, and right next door we have the phase 2 that's going on, and it's like 88% or 90% completed. Should be up and running in the spring. So those are the type of things that happen as we as a BDA, and having that one point of the single point of contact at the table, being your partner and being accessible and ready to give inputs both technically and financially. Again, another, and I touch on this again, another great value or benefit, leveraging more money. By being a BDA, and I think Rachel's going to talk about it later, you have more funding. You have more eligibility for more funding, but also too, you could use that funding as seed money to leverage other money. And we have done that over and over and over again. But, and again, another value and benefit is a technical input and guidance that a BDA project manager is going to give you. I'm at the table. I'm not going to tell you something that's going to burn down your redevelopment or going to cause DEP to come looking for you with enforcement. I'm going to give you technical input that is within our guidelines and our technical regulations, so to make sure that the project is up and running and will be successful. Again, the interface we have with our federal and state partners. EPA is always there. I could always run something by them. sites, a lot of sites are contaminated with PCBs, and EPA take the lead on that. So we have a good relation. Our office have an excellent relationship with the PCB folks on the federal level. We could bring them to the table the next day. I could get that kind of meeting because of past relationships that we set up. So those are things that are very important, and everybody wants to, make sure that it doesn't take 10 months or a year to get approval. And this is where we are, interfacing that project manager, me being able to reach out to EPA and say, hey, can we do this? Or even if I have to reach out to the folks in EPA about funding, Terry Wesley, I could reach out to him or Shaneen. We have that kind of relationship. They show up every time here to our quarterly brownfields. We have that close relationship. So if we don't have enough funding or we can't get enough funding, we could reach out to them and try to set that ball or get that ball rolling. Again, another key value or benefit, we work closely with the LSB and redeveloper. Yeah, stay on this slide for a minute. Very, very close with the redeveloper and LSRP. They will call us or we will call them to get a status of what's going on. If there's any hiccups, we're there to help them walk through the issues. And again, one of probably I think is the most important value or benefit, expediting. What I mean by that, if a project has a review that's internal, that's just been sitting around, or it needs a review, approval, or issuance or something, we could run interference. We could walk across the street or walk across the aisle and just say, hey, where is this at? We need this project because it's a brownfields redevelopment project, and we can't let it just sit around because the developer might walk away, or he might incur too much cost. It's not going to make the project viable for him again. And lastly, we might have to have certain people at the table. If we don't know it, the BDA coordinator could identify who needs to be at the table, and we could reach out and bring that person to the table and have that meeting. And we have done that many times. There's projects I deal with DOT, who slow like molasses. I reach out to them and I tell them the nature of this project or why I need to get this project moving. And we have a conference, I bring everybody to the table, next thing we get everything done. So instead of, here's a developer that was trying to get something done in 9 months, and I was able to reach out to DOT and get it resolved within a month. So those are the values and benefits of a BDA. So for anyone who's I'm sitting out there and taking part in this webinar, we're here. We want to give you the designation. We want to be a partner. We want to get the sites cleaned up and redeveloped. And what is in it for us? Well, I look at brownfields like a win-win. Everybody wins. The state wins, the developer wins, everybody wins. But we win also too, because now we had a site that was, just abandoned, and vacant and an eyesore that been sitting around for decades. So DEP wins also too, because now we meet our missions and our goal. We were able to get the site not only redeveloped, but remediated so it could be protected by human health and the environment. So we look at it from that perspective. And yes, our office, some of us could be a little pushy and we're gonna be at the door and we're gonna push things and but it works. We just, try not to be, to cross the line, but sometimes that's what we have to do. We have to get out, walk over, talk to somebody, let them know what's going on, and just try to push the envelope a little. We don't want to push it off the table, but we're going to push it a little. And this is what our office is doing. This is what you get when you get a BDA and you get this single point of contact. And like I said, and a lot of other folks in the office here, they do the same thing I do. If you have a BDA and you have a project outside that BDA, they're not going to tell you, well, it's not outside the bounds. Yeah, we'll try to do everything we can to help you because it's a partnership. We don't want you to just look at us just, just for something within the BDA. And I always tell Frank and the folks in our office here, is my objective is that if that city has a BDA, the municipality has a BDA, I wanted to be the face of DEP to them. So, if there's an issue in DEP that you're dealing with in DEP that you're having a hard time, and even if it's outside the BDA, yeah, let me know, and I could make a phone call and bring somebody to the table or trying to find out what's going on. So those are the intrinsic values that the BDA has. And, it's been very successful. And I manage a number of BDAs here. And again, I think the key to making a BDA work is the manager, whoever is going to manage it, the chair, the steering committee chair or manager, somebody like Joe, who's there to make it work. The partnership that we set up with the municipality, like the folks at the redevelopment agent, like Atashi, and also that partnership they set up with DEP, which the BDA is all about. So when you walk away from this presentation, what you should walk away with is this: the BDA is a partnership. And that partnership, if it's run well and we're committed to it, it's going to get your project done. And what's, you know, and I know I'm going beyond my time, but let me just kind of say these last thing. When you have a successful BDA, everything around that BDA property starts moving. You get other developers that start coming around, poking their heads. They want to know, hey, what's going on here? What's making this project go? And then when the municipality let them know, I have a BDA, and they go, what's that? Well, that's, we have a partnership with DEP to help us with our remediation. And that speaks volume. Because the developer, what I've recognized in the past, been working on projects, the developer wants to get a project done. They just don't want us to change the goalposts. They want us to come to the table, and say, listen, Tony, where's the goalpost? What the hell do you want me to do? Please tell me, and then just get out of my way. And I experienced that many, many times, because they're in it to make their money. The longer it takes, the more argument they make with me. If I tell them, no, you got to put 3 wells in, or 5 wells, and they go, no, I need 2. I don't even get that. They go, 5 wells you want? 5 wells you got. And then we just move. Just give me a second. And we just move the project along, but that's what happens in that. Let me go to the next tape, the next slide. So again, this is 2 projects that we did in Perth Amboy that's, just big volumes. We talked about
Tony, we're cutting into the break time, and
Okay.
I know they've seen these slides.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go through real
Could you
quick.
wrap it up in 2 minutes so we can go to break, Tony?
30 seconds. So these are 2 projects that we worked on. The top one is the ballpark. This is the before and after. Before it was just like hell. And then after, we put a lot of money, a lot of technical input, and this is what happened next. And then the bottom picture, again, Will talked about that with the phase 2, the warehouses. That's what it was before, and that's what it is right now. So again, for because of time, let me just end it right there, and I think the next slide is pretty much it, right? Next, yeah. So I'm pretty much done with mine.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tony. Sean, how long? Maybe you give everybody a 5-minute break, or?
Yep, we'll come back here at 11:56 and we'll start again. This way everybody can get up, stretch their legs, get something to drink, and use a facility or whatever.
Yeah, thank you, Perth Amboy.
Been a pleasure. Thank you, Frank.
All right, we'll be back at 11:56. Frank?
He's coming back now.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, Frank. We're ready to go whenever you're ready to move into the application.
Okay. All right. So my name is Rachel Sopper, and I'm here with Jamila Harris. And we are going to go over the application for BDA designation for 2023-2024. Next slide, please. And well, as you may know, we have started accepting applications for new BDA designations starting last October, and we are receiving them through April 30th, 2024. And what Jamila and I are going to go over today are the BDA application form, the guidance, and specific templates. And everything we go over today is on our website, and and they're also all fillable, which is a nice update that you will see momentarily. You can see some pictures here. This is the Hamilton Laundry Facility, the former Hamilton Laundry Facility that is part of the Rahway Central Business District, BDA. And we use HDSRF funding to clean up some contamination in the soil and groundwater. We paid for an innovative technology to clean that up. And today, the former Hamilton Laundry site is now the Hamilton stage for the performing arts. Next slide, please. So real quick, I just wanted to put a plug in for the HDSRF, or the Hazardous Discharge Debt Remediation Fund, which I know you've heard many times today. So the HDSRF program is great whether or not you have the BDA designation. However, if you do have the BDA designation, there are significant benefits available to you. So for example, if you do not have the BDA designation, you can get up to $3 million a year, and this is for public entities, so towns, counties, redevelopment agencies. You get 100% of your preliminary assessment, site investigation, remedial investigation paid for, as well as up to 75% of your remedial action. If you do have the Brownfield Development Area designation, that changes to a cap of $5 million a year. You still get 100% of your assessment and investigation. And we'll talk about the difference between the remedial action funding, but there is more freedom with your redevelopment for your remedial action grants. Additionally, as Tony mentioned, you have a point of contact in the Brownfields office. And that person is an advocate for you and your projects, and they can come and talk to the HDSRF coordinators and run projects by us. And, we can determine, help to determine eligibility. Additionally, ownership is not required for HDSRF if you have the BDA designation. So if you do not have the designation, and you're a public entity and you want HDSRF funding, you need to demonstrate an ownership interest or actual ownership of the property. And that is not a requirement in the BDA. However, if you do not own the property and you receive remedial action funding, if you are that public entity and you spend that money and you do not acquire the property, a lien does go on the site for the costs of the grant until that public entity purchases the property. That is only associated with the remedial action phase, and it is not related to the preliminary assessment, site investigation, or remedial investigation. Finally, there is no limitation for your end use type for the remedial action grant. And so if you do not have the BDA designation, you are limited with your remedial action funding for affordable housing end use, renewable energy end use, and recreation conservation end use. However, with the BDA designation, there is no limitation to what your end use is. Next slide, please. Okay, and now we are going to get into the application for the Brownfield Development Area designation. Now, if you came to any of our earlier training sessions or you have filled out our application in the past in the 2000s, this looks very different to you, I am sure. Okay. And so something that we did based on feedback we received from one of our earlier outreach sessions that we had in the Highlands is there was a desire for the application to be fillable. So you no longer have to print it out, handwrite the application and, scan it, copy it, send it to us. You can do this online. And so in order to do that, we needed to update the form with our form people here at the DEP. And so you'll notice, so the form is now only one page as opposed to several pages that you might be used to, or more than several. And if you look in the orange section, you will see that there are many attachments, attachments A through G. That is going to be the bulk of mine and Jamila's presentation today, because those attachments are what make up the BDA application. And fortunately, we were able to have a template, a fillable template, and these are also available online. So you can see for attachments A, C, and D, we have templates provided for you, and they're on our website and they are fillable. All of the others, you need to provide that documentation to us on your own. And then if you look down, the form is just section 1 and section 2, where you just tell us your name, the applicant name. So the applicant for the BDA applications must be a public entity authorized to exercise redevelopment powers pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law. So for example, municipalities, counties, and redevelopment authorities. You can have a co-applicant for your BDA application, and the co-applicant can be a non-public entity such as a nonprofit. If you do have a co-applicant, then you do need to submit 2 forms. Also, the non-public entity cannot apply on their own. And then next, project information, the name of the BDA, and then you want to state the boundaries of the BDA and provide a narrative description of the BDA and why the boundaries were selected. And online, there is an extra blank page for page 2 of this form, but also you can attach as many pages as you would like. Next page, please.
Thank you, Rachel. So now we're going to go over the BDA area application guidance. And we were really happy to produce this document for you as applicants, because this document is going to go hand in hand with the application. So when you are filling out your BDA designation application, it's a good idea to print out the guidance and have it right next to you available so that you can follow along and have a complete application. So I'm just going to go over really briefly. I know we're approaching lunch. Some of the selection and the criteria that we are looking for when we receive the applications in our office. So some of our selection criteria are going to include quality and completeness of the BDA application. We are looking for quality, complete applications with all sections filled out and all attachments submitted. Next, we are looking to for the extent to which the boundaries of your proposed BDA are going to be consistent with the boundaries of a community or neighborhood, rather than just properties that happen to be next to one another. We're really looking for them to be consistent with community or neighborhood boundaries. Next, we want to know the extent with which your proposed BDA is going to be consistent with smart growth principles. And we provide a link for Smart Growth America for you to check out and include that in your application. Then we want to know a description of any redevelopment plans or redevelopment efforts for your proposed BDA. So once you figure that out, we want you to give us a description of all your redevelopment plans. And then also we want the documents that support the implementation of those redevelopment plans. Next, we would like to know the level of community involvement in the BDA. You've heard from Tony, you've heard from Joe Hochreiter, you've heard from William, all about how community involvement is crucial to the success of your BDA. So in the application, we would like to know more about the level of community involvement that you're going to have in your proposed BDA. Next, we want to know the anticipated benefits to the community, public health, and the environment from your proposed BDA. It's also important to note that applicants that are not selected for the BDA designation based on their quality of their application will be able to receive feedback from our office on how to improve their applications for consideration in the near future.
Thanks, Jamila. Next, we're going to go over the Memorandum of Understanding establishing the BDA. And the Memorandum of Understanding is also known as the MOU. Now, the MOU represents the very last step of BDA designation. And so if you are approved for the designation, you are then asked to execute this MOU. And what the MOU is it governs the partnership formed by the steering committee, the host municipality, and the DEP. And it memorializes the obligations and responsibilities of those three parties as it relates to the Brownfield development area. And the MOU is on our website, so you can take a look at it and then you can have an understanding of what those responsibilities might be ahead of time. And also the MOU will get renewed every 2 years based on the BDA manager's opinion that things are moving quickly and that work is getting done based on the progress within the Brownfield development area. Next, who can apply? So applications are submitted by the applicant on behalf of the local steering committee. And as I described earlier, an applicant must be a public entity authorized to exercise redevelopment powers pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law. So typically these are towns, counties, and redevelopment agencies, but you could also look up the local redevelopment housing law and see what else is there. Next, steering committees. So the steering committee should be representative of those people who are involved in the BDA process, those who are interested in what's going on, people who might be affected by the Brownfield development area. So it can really be anyone. So, they can include, but they're not limited by representatives from municipalities, counties, redevelopment agencies, housing authorities, improvement authorities, and other, private stakeholders, neighborhood residents, property owners, developers, LSRPs. And one other thing that we will require regarding the steering committee is all applications must include an ordinance or resolution of support from the host municipality to partner with the applicant steering committee and adhere to the terms of the MOU. Okay, and next, how do you apply? So as I mentioned before, applications have been open since October and they are going to be received through April 30th. And unlike in the past, now we are accepting them digitally only. So these must be emailed to us at the email address that we have there, bdaapp@dep.nj.gov. And also, if you have general questions regarding the BDA process at any time, while you're filling out an application or you have a question about BDAs in general, you can email that email there and someone will check it and get back to you. Next slide, please.
Okay, so now we're going to actually go through the application section by section, and a lot of this will be repetitive. You've heard us discuss it before, but we're just going to give you a little bit of more in-depth detail on the actual sections and what's required as you fill out the application. So section 1 is obvious, it's the applicant information. Something to note in this section, if there's a co-applicant, we would like to see contact information for each applicant. So if you have 2 entities applying, we want to see 2 sets of applicant information to have a complete application. The next section, section 2, is the project information section of the application. This is where you tell us about the BDA project. So this section, section 2, is split into 3 parts. So part 1 is going to be your project boundaries. Here, you're going to tell us the where and the why. So in this section, you want to clearly state the physical boundaries of your BDA They can come with some geographic features, some rivers or other water bodies, railroads or highways. If they're street boundaries, they should be named. This should be an accurate and brief statement. So we have an example here: a neighborhood bounded by River W, Highway X, Y Street, and the Z railway line, containing residential, commercial, and light industrial uses. This proposed BDA includes 6 brownfield sites, which the steering committee proposes should be remediated and reused consistent with an overall community vision for the area. This area was selected because. So it's really important in section 1 of the project information that you tell us where, and then you tell us why this area was chosen. So that's the important thing to note of section 1. The next part is going to be section 2, which is going to be your list of brownfield sites within your proposed BDA. Here's where you tell us the brownfield sites, but you do it in a list format. We are fortunate enough to have this attachment A, which belongs to section 2 of the application, for it to be available online. For your, you have options if you want to fill it out online. It's definitely fillable. So in this section, when you list the brownfield sites, again, a brownfield may be a vacant or improved land, but we want you to list each site and the corresponding street addresses or tax blocks and lots. So these sites may again be individual parcels or multiple parcels that function as a single unit. And an important thing to note here is when you are listing these brownfield sites, they should be identified by their current rather than anticipated name or use. And also, we would like to know the size of these sites and ownership information if it's included. So that's going to be required for section 2 under your project information. Next is section 3. Here's where you like to submit. We would like you to submit a scaled map or photo. So you have a choice here. It could be a map or photo. So when you provide us with the map or photo, we would like this should depict the area, the boundaries of your entire BDA, as well as the individual site boundaries for each brownfield site that you listed in section 2. So for example, if you had a Harris factory in section 2, you gave us a list of brownfield sites, and one of them was called Harris Factory. In section 3, when you submit a map or photo, we'd like that to be identified as Harris Factory. We would like consistencies in how these things are identified throughout the application. So we want these clearly identified and want them consistently named. Also, in section 3 on your map or photo, we would like you to identify any prominent physical features such as streets, railroads, or water bodies.
Thank you, Jamila. Next is section 3, the baseline information for brownfield sites within the BDA. And this is associated with attachment C, which we do have a template for you to use. And so what this is a sheet that has basic information about each site in the BDA. And so if you have 10 sites in your BDA, you would need a separate baseline information sheet for each site. And so this includes basic parcel information and other information. So the name of the site, the address, the block and lot, the acreage. If you were to do a site visit, what is the general condition of the site? We might ask for if there's any known contamination, if there's an existing PI number. Also, site ownership and operational history. And you might be able to find a lot of that information using data miner or through an OPA request. Next is section 4, steering committee, and this is associated with attachment D, which we do have a template for you as well. And so again, the steering committee is comprised of, those people, who will lead the project through to completion. And these are people who are interested in, involved in, might be affected by the brownfield development area. And one thing that we do ask is that the application must include a separate letter of interest from each prospective steering committee candidate that affirms their commitment to the project and the BDA process.
Thank you, Rachel. So now, you can think of your application as a story of your BDA. You're going to tell us the story of it. So at this point in the application, you've told us who you are. You've told us about the project, the BDA, where it is, why you selected it. You've given us a list of all of your sites. You've told us all about your steering committee. And now we want you to tell us about the support for your steering committee. You've heard from the previous presenters how important and crucial your steering committee is to the success of your project. So in section 5, we want you to provide us letters of that support. So in section 5, this is where you demonstrate that your steering committee is in fact representative of the community and it has the support of the community and the host municipality. So in this section, we are looking for 2 ordinances. We're looking for a description of how your steering committee was created. And then we're looking for an ordinance or a resolution from the governing body showing support for the steering committee and that they're willing to enter into an MOU with the department and the host municipality. These letters of support will add weight to your application. Additionally, letters of support from other areas or community organizations should be included in this section. And these letters are encouraged to be unique. We really want explicit statement of support for the steering committee. Also, letters of support from any of the owners of the Brownfield sites in your BDA or any environmental commissions or organizations are also encouraged. So now that we've learned all about your steering committee, how they're going to be supported, the next thing that we're looking for is a community overview. We really want to know an overview of where your proposed BDA will be. So I'm just going to go through really quickly some of the community overview points that are required for the application. In this section, I would like you to pay attention to the order in which these items are listed and the description. So we would like you to give us a quick narrative for the proposed BDA under the following headlines under the community overview section. So first is the justification for your BDA boundaries. So we want to know the rationale for why your BDA boundaries were selected. And we want to know other designations. Maybe it's a school sending area or an active industrial commercial area. We really want detailed information about the current uses within your proposed BDA. It's the justification. The next piece of information we're looking for under community overview is area population and general demographics. So here, this is where you tell us about the resident population using the major census categories. We would like general information, including but not limited to the income, education level, dominant employment sectors, unemployment figures. Next, we want to know about the housing, economic activity, and public assets. So here we want you to describe the residential dwellings and existing commercial or industrial entities in this project area. We also would like you to describe the schools or other public assets necessary to characterize this proposed BDA. Next is local planning designations. Does your proposed BDA have historic districts, special redevelopment areas? In this section, we want you to provide an overview of the municipality's master plan goals and current municipal zoning map for your proposed BDA. If you have other redevelopment plans, you can include it in the local planning designation section. Next, we want to know any special economic development designations. So is your proposed BDA in an environmental opportunity zone or an urban enterprise zone? Next slide, please. Also, your proposed BDA could be in a special federal opportunity zone or a special New Jersey redevelopment authority designation. So this is the section where you provide us that information. Next are state planning areas. We want to know if your proposed BDA is going to be in a state planning area designation. Additionally, we have transportation infrastructure. In this section, you describe the transportation infrastructure for your proposed BDA. Does it have a designated transit village? We want to know the access to public transportation. Next would be your recreation and open space inventory. In this section, you identify your existing parks, playgrounds, public spaces, or water bodies within your proposed BDA. We want a description of all of the existing properties that are used for public recreation and open space. And finally, obstacles to redevelopment. So this is where you tell us any features that you feel represent an obstacle or challenge to your redevelopment, including wetlands, floodplains, tidelands, or threatened and endangered species.
Thank you, Jamila. And finally, we have section 7, the redevelopment vision and community benefits. So this is where you're going to describe your redevelopment efforts and how they are going to support the community and the environment. So here, we would like you to detail the anticipated benefits to the community and the environment as a result of the BDA project. And we would also like a statement of purpose describing any end uses and demonstrating that the objectives of the project are consistent with smart growth principles. And there is another link to Smart Growth America. Also, we want to know what kind of redevelopment planning efforts you have taken on to date. That might be your redevelopment plans, but also your planning efforts to develop a community vision. Also, we're asking for a narrative description of the anticipated benefits to the community from the improvements associated with the remediation of the brownfield sites and the community support for the effort under these following headings. And so, as Jamila described, please include these headings in the specific order with a narrative for each of them, specifically for the direct and indirect environmental benefits, the aesthetic benefits, the quality of life benefits, public health benefits, economic benefits, and also the planned end use. And next slide, please.
Okay, so this is the attachment, attachment A. Like Rachel said, we were lucky enough to get these things available online for you. So this would belong to section 2 under your project information. As I described, it is the BDA site list. So again, this is where you list all of the sites in your BDA, and these are the required fields. You can read them at your leisure, but this is the information we're looking for. And remember, your application is made up primarily of attachments. So please pay attention to the attachments that are required and submit them for a complete application. Next slide.
Okay, and this is an example of attachment C. These are the baseline property data sheets I had described earlier. So for each site in your brownfield development area, you will need one each of these. So if you have 10 sites in your brownfield development area, we would need 10 attachment C's baseline property data sheets. And you can see here, it's the information that I had described earlier. It's the name, property information, the block and lot, the owner, a physical description of the site, if there's any known contamination, if you know the program status, if there's a PI number, and also site ownership and operational history, which if there's a preliminary assessment report available through Oprah, you could get that information very easily. Next slide, please. And finally, attachment D, this is your steering committee list. So this is where you're going to list all the members of your steering committee. And there's only a requirement for the host municipality and the applicant to be on the steering committee. But we do encourage a diverse and large steering committee. And next slide, please. And these are some of the acronyms that we used during the presentation today for clarification, which we hope is helpful to you. And next slide, please. Are there any questions?
So, like I said, if you do have a question, please enter it into the Q&A pane. Right now, there are no questions. We'll give everybody a couple minutes. If anybody has any questions for Rachel or Jamila or Frank, please put them into the Q&A pane. And I'm not seeing anything. So maybe what I'll do is, Frank, I'll go into, I'll give the overview of tab services, and then we'll revisit this and we'll give somebody, 5 minutes for everybody to put their questions in.
Great, Sean, thank you.
Great. Okay, so as you move through this process, or whether it be the BDA or just your brownfield project in general, as you go through the process, you're going to have a lot of different questions. How do I engage my community? How do I solicit a qualified environmental professional? How do I identify and secure funding? Well, that's what basically NJIT is here for. So we are the designated TAB, technical assistance provider, for EPA Region 2. EPA Region 2 consists of New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. NJIT has been a TAB provider since 2008. We've provided services in multiple EPA regions, all the way from Maine to the Caribbean and out as far west as Mississippi. We serve primarily as an independent resource to state, territory, regional, county, tribal, and local government entities and nonprofits that are attempting to learn about, identify, assess, clean up, and redevelop brownfields. And the best part of this program is that it is 100% free of charge. All of the assistance we provide you is free. Free, free, free. Nobody ever believes that, but that's the truth. It's not like we charge you, we give you a little bit of free assistance and then charge you later. All free. And we're allowed to do that because EPA provides us with the funding through a grant to provide those services. So, who is NJIT TAB? What our team? We started out. We had no more than 4 staff. We are now up to 10. We're planners, we're engineers, environmental scientists, social scientists. We've helped hundreds, probably now it's up to thousands of communities across the country. Our assistance, there's multiple TAB providers across the country. Like I said, we're responsible for EPA Region 2 as well as Region 4. And they're all similar. Our program is based on 3 elements. We have our Brownfields Academy or our Resource Center. We have our Brownfield Educational Forums, and we have our one-on-one direct technical assistance. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what each one of those are. So our Resource Center or our Brownfields Academy is essentially our website, and it's chock full of information. There's how-to videos, there are tools, there are resource information such as what available brownfields funding there are, who are the appropriate brownfields contacts. We archive workshops, webinars, and boot camps such as these on our website. So lots of great information, really easy to navigate. All our contact information is up on that website. So please take a look. And even if you're not sure what you think you might want us to get involved in, you can go there and see some examples of what we've done and the communities we've worked with in the past. The second element is our educational forum. So that can be, we speak at conferences across the nation. We do workshops. Those are typically a 2 to 4 hour interactive session on brownfield related topics. We can do brownfield boot camps, which can be anywhere from a half day to a full day. Again, it's a deeper dive on specific brownfield related topics. We do webinars. And we do all grantee meetings, and we work with states, agencies to coordinate those along with EPA. And then the last element of our program, and it's really the cornerstone of NJIT's program, is our direct one-on-one technical assistance. And this is where we really roll our sleeves up and get involved with their projects. We can, do anything basically brownfields related. We can help you identify funding sources. We can develop assets and needs studies. We can show you how to do a brownfields inventory. We can develop brownfields prioritization processes and criteria for you. We can participate in the consultant selection process. Like I said, anything brownfields related, as long as it's typically not something you would hire a consultant to do. So for example, we're not going to go out in the field. We're not going to take samples. We're not going to analyze samples. But if you hire a consultant and have them do that work for you and they provide you with a report that you don't understand, we can interpret that report for you and put it into layman's terms. Also, an example would be for a grant application. We're not going to write your grant application, whether that be for the state or for EPA. However, we will review and critique that grant and hopefully make it more competitive for you. We'll also assist you in helping you identify and find data and information which would relate not only to the EPA grants or HDSRF, it would also include our assisting you with your BDA application. So keep that in mind. And again, all of it's free, and all of our assistance, regardless of whether it's technical, direct technical assistance, or it's an educational forum, we tailor that assistance to meet the community's needs that we're serving. So there's no formal process to get our assistance. You simply call us up or you can email us, and it begins right then and there. We never turn anybody away. We might have to get creative in when we plan to assist you, only because there's other people that we're helping. But other than that, you contact us. Even if you're not sure what you need help with, but it's something brownfields related, give us a call. We can have that conversation, work through that process with you, figure out what you need to be doing, help you lay out a roadmap to move forward, and then figure out where we can apply and assist you throughout that process. So I did put my contact information in the chat. so you can quickly go in there, cut and paste it. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to me. Again, so let's go back to the questions. Let's see. We do have one question here. Is there a limit of 75% of remediation costs for funding?
So that depends on, thank you for your question. That depends on the phase of work. So if you are a public entity and you're found eligible for HDSRF funding, you can get 100% of your preliminary assessment, site investigation, and remedial investigation. However, for the remedial action phase, you can only ever receive up to 75%.
Okay. Next question is, what are the requirements for use of prevailing wage?
Prevailing wage is not a requirement for the HDSRF.
Okay. Are there any other questions anybody wants to enter? That was the last one that I have at least showing on my screen. If anybody has any other questions, please put them in. I know, Frank, do you have anything you want to add at this point while people are maybe adding in some more questions?
Thanks, Sean. I just wanted to encourage the municipalities that are on this workshop that no brownfield development area is too small or not unimportant enough for us to work on, right? We've worked in smaller communities like Haddon Township, Somerville. If you have a gas station, auto body shop, a little town dump or old DPW office or something like that, we're happy to work on in any place in New Jersey. We just have to do it through a brownfield development area designation so we can provide a case manager and the additional funding that Rachel and Jamila talked about. And again, without any restrictions on end use and land use in the brownfield development areas. So again, we're happy to work with the largest communities in the state, and we are working with the largest community states. We're also happy to work with your village, your small town, your township, your borough. We have you can email me personally. You can also, we have if you Google NJDEP Brownfield Development Area, we have a website to ask general questions to. So please reach out to us, and we want to talk about how we can work together so you can submit a brownfield development area application over the next several weeks. Thank you to everybody who attended. Thanks to NJIT for coordinating this, and thanks to our partners at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for funding this workshop and the great work we do together on brownfield sites in New Jersey.
Frank, we
And
got
thanks to my Perth Amboy team who presented.
One last question came in.
Okay.
Does your BDA have to be an area designated? Oh, hold on, somebody added a question and jumped it. Hold on.
I think I saw that. Does it need to be designated as an area in need of redevelopment? And I would say
Yes.
that it's not a requirement, but it might support your application. And I would say typically many of the projects that we see in our program, they are areas designated as an area in need of redevelopment. Again, not a requirement, but it might support your application.
Yeah, a local redevelopment plan or planning tool, whether it's a master plan or so there's neighborhood redevelopment plans, that would be fine too, right? Area need of redevelopment it has a little more power, but just show us what your local vision is, and with the local planning tools that you have available, and then we'll work with you.
Okay. Well, that was the last question. To reiterate what Frank said, thank you all thanks to all the presenters. Thanks for everybody for taking the time to attend and participate in today's virtual workshop. Thank you to NJDEP for collaborating with us and allowing us to participate in this as well. Again, if you have any questions, you should have everybody's contact information. All of this will be put up on our NJIT's website, the recording of today's virtual workshop, as well as all the presentations. So with that, I'll close out the workshop.
Thanks, Sean. I just want to mention we have a brownfield development. We have a brownfield quarterly roundtable Tuesday, January 30th. That just a Teams meeting. You can join remotely or come to meet us in Trenton, 401 East State Street. And you can email me or Rachel if you have any questions. Thank you.
All righty. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.